Two Soviet ships collide. One dies.
One of the two Soviet ships dies.
No, one person dies. One person dies.
Well, you have to argue it out in between you.
They are unmanned.
What you're saying is it has two meanings, right? It can be interpreted as, I mean, one dies. When you first read, two Soviet ships collide, one dies. First meaning, what's the first meaning you get? Chips, right? You don't find it funny? I can't see anybody laughing. Come on. So anyway, it's ambiguous between, you already said it, one could be either a person or one of the two ships. This is what we call ambiguity, right? It's ambiguous between those two meanings. What about the second one? Kids make nutritious snacks.
Either kids are making it or
They
the
are
snack is made of
themselves the
kids.
snacks.
Okay. So where does that difference come from? The meaning of make, alright. So, the meaning of make, this is something that linguists typically, I mean, I don't know if they really call it that, they call it semantic ambiguity and things, but I would call it referential ambiguity, what the one refers to or who the one refers to. Here you have two meanings of this word. Here it's not the meaning difference, it's not the meaning of the word that is different, but what it refers to. Here you have what linguists call lexical ambiguity, or two meanings of a word. What about this?
Helps dog bite victims. Helps dog bite victims.
If the pause is after dog,
Uh-huh.
Helping the dog.
Right.
so it actually should be a compounded word. Dog bite dog bite, right?
So what are the two meanings then?
The squad is helping the dog to bite victims.
Mhm.
Then the squad is helping those victims who have been bitten by dogs.
Okay. So, and Sriram, you said it's structural ambiguity. You're absolutely right. The way we disambiguate this is by saying that the sentence actually has two different structures. Right? So you have, let's say, the sentence, okay, has two parts. The squad, and it has again two parts. Helps, and you have, I'm going to put it like this. I'm not going to draw separate branches. This is one way of showing that we're not interested in the internal structure of that thing. And this is where Vignesh was saying there should have been a hyphen. Very often you don't put the hyphen, so dog bite victim. So that's one meaning. And the other is you have the squad, and what does the squad do? It helps dog bite victims.
But I think you would need the internal structure because otherwise they will look the same. Internal
okay.
structure for the triangle.
Okay. Right, so let's do that. You have this. This is dog bite and victim. So notice here you have word wise, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here you have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Different structures. Now, linguists those who do linguistics of the kind that Mohan and I do, are interested here in this kind of ambiguity, if we are interested in ambiguity. We are sometimes, in some cases, this kind as well, where it throws light on structure. This is the kind of ambiguity we are not particularly interested in. It's just two different meanings of a word. Okay? So this was just by way of, I was hoping it would be more funny, because even recently I showed these to people and I have had peals of laughter. So.
Some of us are already read it.
Oh, you have? All right. So it's not funny anymore. All right. Oh, I forgot. We put this here just to remind us that we need to make an announcement. You want to do that?
Yeah. The people who wanted to see IIE Labs should be at the reception of the main building at 4 o'clock tomorrow. And Sudha will take you around. So that means 4 o'clock in the morning. Yeah.
Okay.
So
That's 4 p.m. Our plan was, what had come up was that you would do longer presentations tomorrow. And we were going to have presentations from 2 to 5:30, right? So that you had more time. If we're doing this means you have to leave at least at 3:45. Perhaps we should have whatever presentations remain on the 20th morning. That
So-
means that you can't have that extended.
So we should leave from
inquiry
here at
session.
about 3:45.
Right,
That means tea at
3:45,
3:30.
3:30. Okay, so perhaps the remaining, unless you want brief presentations tomorrow, if you want extended presentations, then we'll do it. That's something,
Yeah.
if you want to discuss this amongst yourselves,
Or
that-
come back after the labs. Come back here.
that's a possibility.
How
But we
long-
don't know how long that's
how
going to
long-
take.
That's kind of left to us. Like let's say 4 to 5. Not beyond 4 to 5:30, because they don't have very much time either.
Okay,
It cannot
perhaps
go
we
beyond
should discuss
5:30.
the time of the presentations after
Yeah.
this. All right. Now, suppose I tell you, or you find in the dictionary, a word like this. Looked up word that you find it in the dictionary, and its meaning is polished. Okay? Now I give you a sentence. You haven't seen at least one of those words ever before. Do you understand that sentence?
It's a wrong sentence. It's a wrong sentence.
I think instead of saying polished, if you say smooth,
Okay.
yeah.
Then it is right.
Is that okay, Rajesh?
Then it is right.
It's all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So spitch means smooth, and did you spitch in the table? Do you understand the sentence? Everyone, right? Yes or no?
Yeah. I have no idea.
You could have.
No, did happen, na? अंग्रेजी हमें कम समझ में
Did you आपने किया?
Sorry? Yeah, that's a good question. They're asking why not polishing? If you can have smooth, why not polish?
Polishing.
If speech can be a word, even polishing can be a word. If speech can be a word, why are we assuming that it means the same as what we think it is?
No, I'm giving you the meaning. This is I'm the dictionary. And I'm giving you the meaning of speech, as I said, polished.
Polished.
Not
in the
polished.
past tense. Polished.
Polished.
No,
Or like the act of polishing is what you're
Forget
saying.
polished.
okay, that's why I think that's why Vagish suggested that it could be complicated, so change it and say smooth, right? So did you switch in the table? Do you understand it, everyone? Right? What does it mean?
Smooth in the table.
Did you smoothen the table? So you've never seen this word before, and yet you were able to interpret it, right? How did you do that?
Because we knew the meaning is smooth, and we are going by the structure of smooth as smoothen.
This is one of the reasons why I didn't want smooth, because smooth has so. But in that case, yes.
It's in the place where a verb would be, so you assume that it's an action which refers to the adjective speech.
Thank you. Okay, so you're saying that if this means smooth, we are assuming that we won't go into categorization of words and things, but you're all familiar with the word adjective. You're assuming that this is an adjective while this is a verb. Right? Okay, and there is a relationship. You obviously saw a meaning relationship. What is that relationship of meaning? Between the two, that word, the speech, and its use as speech in a sentence.
You're making it speech.
Okay.
The verb in making is the adjective.
Okay. So what you have is an adjective, speech, and it has a meaning, well, whatever. And then you have speeching, and it's, let's say, X. You're saying, make it X. That's what you're saying? All right. And where is that meaning of make it coming from?
The way it is used in sentence.
From N.
This part, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you could in fact say that you could write this as this is the same as that. Make something things. What we have here is a correlation, right? What you have is a correlation. I'm going to take this away. A correlation where you have a change in form. Correlating with that is a difference in meaning. Right? Okay. Should we put any handouts?
Are there extras this?
Okay, so Now, if you look at the examples in the handout, have things like the sky was red, the sky became red. Again, you see a relationship, a correlation between form and meaning. The sky was red and became red, along with the difference in form is a difference in meaning, correlating with it. And again, and the next one is the red sky and the sky reddened. In C and D, we've already said it, the meaning lies in EN, and the difference in meaning lies, the new meaning is brought by EN, if you wish. But why not the reddened? There's an ED there. Why not ENED? How would you argue if I asked you, why can't we say that the difference in meaning between 1C and 1D is because of ENED rather than rather than just EN? Do you have any evidence there that you can look for?
The slide is already red, the red sky.
Yes, the red sky, but you have reddened. That's a different sentence, and in that sentence in D, you're saying that the difference in meaning lies in the ENED rather than just the EN.
In the
Past
example,
tense.
Uh-huh.
sky was reddened, so it is acting as reddened is acting as a verb form. So maybe because it's a past tense, so in this particular sentence I add ed to it.
Okay, so in other words, the ED part is doing something else which has its counterparts in E and D. In E you have the S, the present tense, and in sky you have no marking, right? So we say that meaning here is really EN here as well. So you have that correlation. Now,
What's the argument for saying it is not in, it is
in ED, because there are examples there.
without ED?
Yeah, no, this is, the sky reddens and the sky will redden. In each of
Okay.
those, you have the EN and the ED is doing something else.
Yeah, will, okay,
Right?
yeah.
Okay. C and D, and then if you also look at E and F, ED, the ED in reddened has corresponding S in example 1E, reddens, and in will redden as well. Okay, so we've already seen that there is a correlation from speech and speech.
I don't know if this is, should be said at this point, but the technique that Tara is using is very similar to something that can be used for gene analysis. That's it.
Okay, so it can be used for gene analysis. This is also a technique that linguists use to, experimentally elicit data and it's not in a lab. You can do this anywhere with any speaker. It's trying to unearth the judgments that they have about the language. If you speak the language, the idea is that you have some, if you introspect, you'll find that you have some intuitions about the language. It's not intuitions, but judgments about, just like moral judgments. Here you have linguistic judgments. Now the question here is, we raise this with the family structure story. Is this representative? Here we have to ask, is this a regularity or is this just an accidental correlation? And how do we find out if it's a regularity?
Look at similar words.
look at some of the similar words. So this is what you do in science, right? You say that something is a regularity or a pattern. If you find it repeatedly in various places, there is a recurrence of the pattern. So you have, if you look at the examples in 2, you gave the words smooth and smoothen, and then you have the road was wide, the road widened, his face darkened, darkened, the thick soup and the soup thickened, and so on. And you can find plenty of examples of this. Okay, we've already, the question that is raised there, we've already sort of looked at the correlation. Let's look at another correlation. Here, if you can just spend a minute looking at the examples in 5 and 6, and go ahead and discuss these with your neighbors if you wish. You can just read the examples and see if there is any kind of correlation there. Yeah.
Coming back to the red, and I will go to the 5. One difference in the example in 1 and 2 is that the word red, there is another D that gets added.
Yes.
Is there any reason?
That's a matter of spelling.
And like it doesn't happen in the other examples.
There's a reason for it, which has to do with the sound system. We won't go into that.
By the first question, if I'm still coping with that, so what we are trying to say is the meaning of the word changes because of the addition of the 2 letters, something like that. So is that what we are looking at?
Yeah, so, no, not just that. There's also the relationship between, I think it's 1A and 1B. The sky was red and the sky became red. There's a relationship there, right? And that, what is the relationship? What's the relationship in meaning between 1A and 1B?
Something has happened and something is happening.
Okay, B describes the process. What about A?
describes the condition, state.
Okay,
Being.
so, all right. So A describes something like a state of affairs, and B describes what you're calling a process, right? And corresponding to that are the words was and became. Now, the interesting thing happens when, now that is between 2 words in a sentence. Here in the sky is red and the sky reddened, or reddens, or will redden, whichever. The relationship is between red and redden. It's between 2 words. It's inside, and the relationship is inside. It's in here, right? Because this is contained in it. The question is, what is it that this is doing? That is what gives you this part, right? The meaning. So the question is a broader one, a correspondence where you have a change of form, you have a corresponding change of meaning. Right? In fact, if you go back to this example, the dog bite example, you have a correspondence not only, we had the 2 structures here, not only in the structures, but also if we were to say it out loud, I didn't say the sentence out loud deliberately. Squad helps dog bite victim versus squad helps dog bite victim, right? There is a correspondence of structure and meaning and sound, the way you say it. So that's the kind of correlation there is. And the idea is that, see, when, in the case of a pendulum, the length of the pendulum correlating with the length of the period. Right? And how do you capture that? By stating a scientific law. The idea here is, if you have a systematic correlation, can you try to state it as a scientific law? And how do you capture that correlation?
For example, whenever we add en to a word, it makes an adjective to a verb, something like that.
Exactly.
So this is a change in form leading to a change in
Corresponding to or correlating with a change in meaning. And if it's an accidental thing, we're not interested in it. But if it is systematic, then if it is a pattern, yes, then we are. So let's go back to 5 then. I'll just read the sentences. Doll's broken leg. The doll's leg is broken. The doll's leg broke. Bheru broke the doll's leg. And Pip made Bheru break the doll's leg. Is there any correlation, like a correlation of this kind, of any kind, between, the sentences are different, the forms of the sentences are different. Is there a corresponding difference in meaning?
The emphasis is on different parts of the sentence.
Okay. Which part of the,
For
what do you mean
example,
by?
in doll's broken leg, the emphasis is on leg, whereas doll's leg is broken, it's on the action of breaking.
No, it is on the state of the leg
Yeah.
that it is broken.
It could be a state of affairs, like something simple there.
Or
In fact, the
in
first-
Bheru broke the doll's leg, you're drawing attention to Bheru, for example. That's what I was trying to say.
Okay.
No, but that depends on how you say it. Beru broke the doll's leg, then that becomes different.
Maybe we should just step back from the emphasis part of it and just look at the bare meaning without emphasizing anything specific. Or, if you want, more particularly, look at the different manifestations of the word break in the 5 sentences. Right?
There are 5 ways of breaking it.
5 ways. Okay. So, now how are we going to figure out if there is a systematic, first of all, what is the correlation? One way in such cases to figure out the correlation is to paraphrase those sentences in such a way that the paraphrases bring out the correspondence. Can we do that?
Paraphrasing, sorry.
Paraphrasing those sentences
So
in such a way that the relationships come out, yes.
There might be some confusion because of the en in broken
Uh-huh.
and en in redden.
Whoa, all right. Okay.
Yeah.
The en in broken, if you see it, it's a very different kind of en, right? Okay. So let's ignore the en part in the broken. Let's just look at the meaning of the sentence. So,
the word
Is the state, so as the adjective,
uh-huh,
for the leg.
it's describing the leg.
okay. So, for 5A
And B.
and B, both, okay. The leg
It's being described as verb.
is in the state of being broken. Would that capture it?
What
5A.
Broken leg?
Broken leg, right?
Yes.
We don't know whether it's being done, whether it has been done, it always existed that way.
But that was the state of the leg.
Current state of the, right? And you're saying it's the same for B? All right.
Yes.
What about C?
Agreed.
See is the process. What was done to the dolls?
No, all we've said is the doll's leg broke. Right?
So what happened to the dolls?
Doll or vase. Means
Sorry?
five-
It is also a
5C
state of
and 6C. In terms of doll's leg and vase.
Uh-huh.
So,
Now, if we just, let's stick to 5 right now.
It came into the state of being broken.
Okay? You're saying the leg came into the state of being broken.
Which is implying that it wasn't so earlier, but so a change has happened. Is that?
So came into, now one way to say this would be it changed from the state of being not broken to the state of being broken. I'm not going to write that whole thing. Right? So changed or came into the state of. Okay. How about D?
It's the same thing with an agent specified. Somebody made it happen.
Kaustubh, I think I'm going to have to ask you to not say it. You seem to know the answers. Okay, but that's very good. D is you need somebody. Right?
Change the state.
Okay.
A different person. Change caused
Broke. Acted on. You said there's an actor, so acted on maybe. The leg and
Brought it to the state of
okay. Caused it. Somebody said caused
failure caused
it to
being broken.
in that.
change to state of being broken. How about E?
somebody
The
was
same as D, but there's another person introduced
state
into
of being.
Uh-huh.
It's an eternal
It
state.
is a process. It's a
We don't know how he made him do it.
Notice we used, Sriram suggested that this is a process with red and redden. Maybe we should, and we used it, so we should stick to process there. So this would be a process. Right? Since we used it earlier, we don't want to use the same term for two different things. So how about here?
But we don't know how, whether it was compulsion or influence or inspiration or I don't know.
So how would you say that? It made caused? All right.
It caused D.
Yeah, to yeah. Do you see the relationship between these now? And you could actually just, as Shikhar suggested, we could change leg to vase and broken to shattered and get exact, not that one. Right. So A, B, C, D, you would get the same thing for vase and shattered. Okay. Now if you look at 7 and 8, before we go on to go into details of the examples in 5 and 6, you find this kind of correlation across languages. And you have some examples here from Hindi. Toota shisha, I don't know if that's okay, right? Shisha toota hai, shisha toota, bheru ne shisha toda, and Pip ne bheru se shisha todwaya. And you have bheru ko sher dikha, bheru ne sher dekha, and Pip ne bheru ko sher dikhaya. Like that you have khula, khola, khulvaya, and so on. I'm sure you can find plenty of examples. So again, we're going to assume that this correlation is a systematic one in Hindi as well. And it says, are there any parallels? There's a question there. Let's ignore that and go on to, you can play around with that on your own to figure out. Yes,
So
Nick?
the correlation here is again in the form, so broken and what it means, then when it's broke and what it means. That's the correlation we're looking at in interaction.
So what you have, it's not just the group, but actually other part, it's not, yeah. So if you take the meaning of the verb in each of these sentences, it's the different manifestations of the verb
Which we are correlating
with the, yes. Right? Obviously, we have two examples of break and shatter, but in 9, 10, 11, and 12, 13, 14, you have further examples of this. See, like I said earlier, we say that something is a regularity when we find it again and again, the same pattern repeated. And we say that it is significant, that pattern is significant when you're able to pull together a number of phenomena which can be stated in terms of that pattern or sub-patterns or variations on that pattern. So, when several phenomena converge on a single pattern, the more the phenomena, the greater the significance. This is exactly like what Vagish was saying about convergence of evidence. So you have examples like the water boiled, Bilbo boiled the water, stone moved, Bilbo moved the stone, the door opened, Bilbo opened the door, the stone rolled down the hill, Bilbo rolled the stone down the hill. Windows were closed, the windows closed, I closed the windows. The peppers were dry, the peppers dried, my mother dried the peppers. Exactly the same. Now, once we see the pattern, is there some way we can extract the substance out of here, of the pattern? Can we remove the noise, in other words? And, right? So let's say, if we remove this, or perhaps I should write it again. Put it here. You have leg is in the state broken. Leg change to state broken. would I say the next one?
Leg change to change position because of cause.
Okay. So you have how is this? I'm going to, well, let's ignore the E for now. Yeah? Now the L can be replaced with B, or was, broken can be replaced with shatter. So is there some way to make it even more abstract, to bring out the relationships?
Will B not be process also change to state?
Sorry?
L changes to state broken. Is that not process also?
Yes, this is a process.
Is
That
the
is a
question whether
process.
change is the process or the end that broken?
Yes.
Sorry?
Which one is the question?
Change.
Change.
Should, yes.
The change
change,
is
yeah.
the process.
Okay.
Yes.
In fact,
I think that's what, red and that came out. Yes.
that's the very definition of process.
Yes. And you could say this is a state. Okay, so what can we do to make this even more abstract so that it's not tied down by the leg and the breaking and so on? Actually, let's first remove the leg. And, okay, suppose we say X is in a state broken. Because it could be anything, right? We're not talking about just these sentences, but, okay, so change all of those to X. Now the X can be a vase or a leg or whatever. And let's say this is Y. Right?
Can the state also be replaced with something to make it more abstract? I mean, if it's a pattern we are seeing across words also, not just broken or shattered.
Mhm. Okay, so the idea is, can we change the broken as well? Right? X is in a particular state, whether it is a broken state or boiled state or dried state, shattered state, whatever. And then X can change state, and Y can act on something and actually act on X, right? The moment you have change, and you have caused X to change state. You've gone even further to a greater abstraction. You have some kind of an algebraic representation from the paraphrases. Notice this is repeating itself. Actually, X change to X state. Right? And again, X state. Have this repeated. You have another, and then you have, what else do you have? We've found state and change to on X, on X, on X, act on X, okay. And you also have you going to say something?
Yeah, no, so the X state is because over there, first L was X, I mean the leg, and X state was broken.
Yes. So the leg the leg was broken, the leg is broken, was broken, will be broken, all of those. We've abstracted those things away, and we're saying that X is in a particular X state. That's it. X is in a particular
So
state.
when you say X changes, so what's X? What changes?
X could be anything. You could fill X in. It's a variable then, where you could fill it in with anything.
Okay, but the X which is changing is different from the state to which it is changing to.
Actually, no, it's not. It's the X changes to this particular state. So the leg broke, or the vase shattered. The vase changed to that particular, changed from the state of not being broken to a state where X is in that state. It is in that state.
And one thing is X is leg also, X is broken also. That's what it's coming.
No. X is not broken.
Okay.
That is just the state. The state is the broken state.
Okay.
Or the shattered state.
Okay, so leg broken.
X is leg.
So the
Yeah.
first one is the state. The first statement is the state, and the second one is the X changes to the state, which was one, the first one.
It could be book fell, and then the process could go on.
Okay, all right. Now, put this way, this is very hard to see. Shall we use again our tree structure?
Yeah.
Right? Now, what we're finding here is pieces of, we're finding Lego blocks put together. Right? You can think of these as the semantic atoms or Lego blocks that you put together to create more complex meanings. Now, what are the meanings? What are the blocks that you have here? You have X state. Suppose I changed the meaning of the word event. Okay? Think of each of these blocks. Let's call each of these types of blocks an event. Okay? Forget the meaning of the word event for now. Just think of each of these as an event. So you have one kind of an event. Okay. You have another kind of event. You could think of a third kind of event. If you want to say somebody caused something. And you also have, we'll just stick with X here. Oh no, let's change. Why make it Y, please. Y act. Now when you say Y act, we have here a Y act on X. What we say that on X is optional, the way we say it is rather than putting it as two separate, we could put this as two separate Lego blocks, or we could.
There might be a problem in using X for both the first left diagram and the right diagram, because I think people are interpreting those X's to be the same. They don't have to be. Yeah,
This one?
change that to some alpha, beta.
Okay.
Yeah.
We use Y here and
On part.
why are we changing it just in case you think it's the same? It's just variables, it's different variables. And in a particular case, it might be the same. Yes.
So X is what is being changed, or is it the state that is changed?
X is.
The state of X is changed.
So X is like the leg
And-
in this example.
Right, alpha, in this case, okay, in this case, the X is the leg and the state is broken.
Okay.
In this, alpha is the leg. And change to, we just put it, notice now at this point, I don't even want to say leg or break or anything. We've abstracted away from all that. This is just, like I said, Lego blocks with which you can build pieces to express or capture the meanings of sentences. Right? Yeah.
So, I mean, just a thought that if the first one is state of X, so state of the leg is broken. And the second one, instead of putting alpha, change to state of X. So there's a change to become.
Okay, all right. I think let me just put this as two things, and then here, let me give you two more Lego blocks. And beta act on M. All right. What I've put down are 5 abstract things. We don't know what these things are. But now notice we can actually add something here which is missing. Change to what? Here, cause what? We can say there's an abstract E there. Why cause an event? Alpha change to event. Okay, event in this sense.
Yeah, so it could change to another state and that is also called event.
Right, because notice we have an E that is just X state. Right? Are we using these to express those meanings, just putting them in terms of trees rather than in terms of algebraic strings?
I just want to find out how many people here are familiar with predicate calculus.
How many people are familiar with predicate calculus?
What is
Word
that?
of mathematical calculus.
What is that?
Okay,
Word of calculus.
that's okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to get a sense, yeah. If you ask what is that, you have answered my question.
Okay. Now that we put it like this, I'm going to erase this, and then let's try and, okay, let's take the examples in 14. You have 3 sentences there. Let's try and represent those sentences such that we capture their meanings in terms of, capture the relationships of the meanings of those 3 sentences. I think it's 14. 14. Page 2. Page 2, 14. The peppers were dry. And what we're doing here really is just seeing how these Lego blocks can be put together to express the meanings of these sentences. Okay? So if you could just give me the sentences.
The peppers were dried. So X will be dry. Dry state.
I'm just going to use index. And now we can fill in these specific things from this sentence. X is the peppers and the state is dry. Now do you see how these Lego blocks allow you to express the meaning of different sentences? How about B? is how we might put these together.
Changes.
Peppers
Change
Changes.
Alpha change to
to E.
Okay. Let's just, change is what you're all saying it is. So, alpha change to E. And what is this E?
Sun.
this one.
Notice, it's alpha that is changing. You don't want something else here. You want to use the same thing, right? Because you don't want to say, because they're the same thing. Okay, so. This is the peppers, and the
Sun.
state is?
Sun.
See how the blocks now the atoms can now be put together to form complex representations.
So it's even in the sun, so we are not going to consider that?
No, we can, if you want to give the entire sentence, you would have to add that as well, but right now we're just abstracting away the related parts of the sentence. All right, what about, we have space here. Let's try. How about C? What is C?
Y causes.
My mother
My
cried
mother
peppers.
is alpha change to
My mother dried peppers. Okay. How would I do this?
go above this.
Actually, yes, exactly. Now, instead of doing it again, I could have just gone upwards from here and built on the same thing, right? But that would be a different sentence. So, in this case, let's see, what would your top E be?
Why cause?
acted on.
Y cause.
Action, by cause, other cause.
Okay, so is there a cause here? Or is it just
Action.
Okay. Is it act, or is it act on?
Act on.
Right? So we don't have an evidence to choose between those, so let's just say she did something to the peppers, right? So why act on? I'm just going to say X here. All right. And no, I think I need some more space. I'm going to remove the.
See how nice it would have been to just shift to
You have, do you have these in the handout? No, you don't. No, you don't. Okay, doesn't matter. You'll get it after the session anyway, so, yeah, let's take this away and cause event. Acted on X and caused event. What is this event?
Alpha change to Z.
Notice, X is what is being acted on here, so we could use the same thing. This is why I was using X's and Y's in this, but there was some confusion, so, alright. So, X, what happens here?
Change to E. And then you change X state.
And X state. Now notice I'm using a convention of uppercase letters for the atoms and lowercase for variables and for the words. Right? Yeah, Jesh.
Act on and cause both are there in that level.
Yes, it's a single, well, no, I'm putting them to actually, I don't want to go into the evidence for this because it will mean going into a lot of data, but what happens is you can have an event, this is just an aside, not part of all this. You can have an event where you have X act on Y and cause an event. And we found also cases where there is evidence to say that you need to break this into two parts, where an event is made up of two events, where this is X act on Y and X cause event.
Two steps.
Okay. Here, without saying anything, I sneaked in something because I didn't want to go into it. But that's a different story. We'll have to sort of tell a much longer story if we want to get into that. So can we ignore that for now? Yeah. And here you have Y. Notice it's Y act on X and Y cause. So this is mother. You have, there's no barrier against crossing lines here, but either you have to cross lines or you have to say the M twice. I'm just taking the easy way out. And this is my mother drives the house. What we've done is to break down the meaning into its parts and put them back together to bring out the relationship between these sentences. Yeah.
So I was first very confused with how X kept changing, but I think that somewhere it's clear. What I can't understand is why the word state we give a value to, if I may use the word value.
Sure.
But we are not giving anything on act or cause. Like I thought earlier X meant the state of being dry, which is, so why are we, not following up?
Actually, if you want to, you could notice in all of these, you can.
Except for
actually,
act.
notice, you don't need to do that because you don't need to bring the X here, here. But cause an event. Why aren't we saying the event itself is changed to? So you don't need to say anything about that because it's part of the structure. And then you have another event there, which means they're all related by that chain. So in the end, because all you have is mother dried the peppers.
So what I mean is here it can't be X state E and E is dry. I mean, why is there no variable being used for drying? Because that is what we were changing in every sentence earlier.
We just removed the word broken, we didn't add anything there. Because that is the state, right? The state of being broken, the state of being dry, and so on.
If you ask them to do Hindi, like Sikhna, Sikhana, Sikhwana, it might become clear. If they do it themselves, so ask them to do it, it will become clear.
Not in Hindi, then what language?
We can probably try one in English first.
No, Hindi is much better.
Really?
Tamil is easier,
Well,
No, pick a triplet or quadruplet.
sorry?
If you pick a triplet and quadruplet, it becomes easier to see the relationship.
Actually, in Hindi, you have things like where you have a quadruplet. I can't think of an example right now.
Sikhna, Sikhana, Sikhwana.
Sikhna, Sikhana, and Sikhwana.
Sikhwana, yeah.
हमें सीख
That's a
गया.
nice one, yeah.
हमने सीख लिया, Sikhwana is X made Y teach. You don't have that?
Khelna could be one. Khel, khelna, khilana, khilwaya.
Khana also.
The reason I hesitate with khelna is because khilana is
Eating and
ambiguous between feed and cause to play. So
Pina, pilana, pilwaya.
बहुत dangerous one है
Pilwaya would be this.
Padna could be one. Padna, padhana, padwaya.
yeah, but then padna.
Padna, padhana, padwaya.
But then it's only a triplet still. You don't have a quadruplet, right?
But even a triplet will take care of Jayashree's problem.
What is Jayashree's problem?
The act upon.
Act on and cause.
Okay. No, actually it doesn't. Doesn't quite clear it.
When
Because
you have the
there's
next positive, doesn't the act disappear?
Sort of, but yeah, okay. Alright, if you take the
Tara, you could continue. Maybe we will take it offline.
no, this is fine.
Rona would be a positive. Rona, Rulana, Rulwaya, and
It's not quite the same thing.
Rulaya,
X Roya. Sorry? Time. Okay. Now notice I'm using, what are the words that I have in uppercase? I have state, change, cause, and act. Right? Everything else.
Bolna.
So the X is a variable, the Y is a variable. The moment.
On then why not?
Sorry?
The act on, the change to.
It's not so common. Bolna is
Good. I mean, that's a matter of convention.
Bolna
It's
is
not.
much better.
Yeah, change to act versus act on.
So
Now notice you have,
Called.
yeah, you have a plain and simple act. X acted or X act. The child jumped or the child ran, right? But act on, the child teased the dog. You have acting on something. Act on and cause, that's what they're trying to say. Let's take Rona, Rulwana and, okay?
there is a little this thing. You want to take Bolna? It has common usage.
Bulaya,
call out.
yes, it changes the meaning. That relationship gets lost in that. The word meanings are different. Sorry?
Beja double meaning.
Bijaya, bijwa. No, you don't have this. Okay.
Use के साथ
Form is none of those. This is all part of it. Okay. There's a question here which might.
Tara, can you just specify the activity? I mean, this is from again, but just here
Can we please? Okay. What was your question?
this triplet that we're trying
Yes.
to figure in Hindi. I
Right.
mean, can we just be specific on the task as to what is the triplet?
We're going to do that. We're going to actually do it.
We just
Actually, if you want to try doing it, using these pieces if you want to construct the representations for Rona or Hasna, Hasna, Hasana and Haswana, Rona, Rulana, Rulwana, right? Is that what you're
No, the reason for the question is, can we try something in Tamil? So I want to know what exactly is that implicit model
Three forms of the word.
But Pottipichu is also possible.
But in all those cases, Pottipichu is coming after.
Yeah, it's exactly the same as, in fact, alright, let's do this, you tell me how to do this. Rona, Bacha Roya. And once we've done that, we'll do this for Tamil and either Tamil or Malayalam or both. Or actually, you can just put in the Tamil and Malayalam forms. Alright, Bacha Roya. It's an event. What kind of event is it? Bacha Roya.
It's a state.
Are you sure it's a state?
No.
Action.
So you have
Tara, 1 second. If it bacha ro raha tha, then it would be state. If it is like.
Describe.
You have to go into, yes.
That's also an action.
It's a little more complicated.
Yes.
Ro Rahata is also an action.
Rota hua bacha would be a state.
Yes.
Because of now, maybe because there is a living things, the action being done on it. Here, if the person needs to do the action themselves, which is why we have to change this.
No, even if it is something like बच्चा कमरे में है it's a state, right? बच्चा बीमार है it's a state. So it doesn't have to be living, but here he's doing something.
These are the three we are trying to see.
बच्चा रोया. Okay. रुलाया. X ने Y को रुलाया. और Y ने X को रुलाया. What do you have there?
Cause.
Okay.
Why cause event? Cause event, that event is this exact. Yes.
Are you sure it's just cause रुलाया?
Caused him to cry.
Cause state.
उसको कुछ किया नहीं.
That we don't know, maybe cried on it.
कैसे रुलाया?
डराया भी हो सकता है.
पर कुछ किया ना, उसने कुछ करके हाँ. Right? So this is what you get with Rulaya.
But what is Rulwa? Is there Rulwa?
Let's be checked. There is. There is Rulwaya.
There is Rulwa. Rulaya.
बच्चा रो नहीं रहा था तो डॉक्टर ने माँ से बच्चे को रुलवाया.
But Rulaya and Rulwaya.
No. Rulaya and Rulwaya are different.
Yes.
How? Rulwaya.
I have a remote when
Sorry, I can't hear what is being said here. Yes.
Yeah, I think that you can say that a person acts on another person to cause that. You can also say that, like, say, what? causes Veru to cause the leg to break.
You can
I
just
think
use the word cause instead
twice.
of using act on.
Instead of
Okay.
Because act is implicit in cause.
Is it really? Okay, I'm going to give you an example. Tell me if that helps to sort this out a little bit.
How about John?
John waved his hand. And,
Some other
okay,
John.
doesn't matter. John. X. All right. Sorry, John. X broke the vase. Or X.
No, how about John caused Bill to die by wearing a red shirt? Because, John wore a red shirt and Bill was terrified of red shirts. He had a heart attack and died.
That's just a cause.
Yeah.
I'm going to say the wind broke the vase. The wind didn't act. The wind didn't do anything, right?
Yeah. Also, what break is different from broke.
Sorry?
Isn't it the same thing? I mean, it's an action in the more general sense of the word action.
Intention.
Well,
I mean, you can't distinguish.
you can't distinguish it.
The mother dried the peppers and the wind broke the vase. I mean, how are you distinguishing between mother and
The mother did something.
Yeah, but just
You're
because
not
mother is conscious. I mean, does
Yes.
that matter?
Yes, because what's the good? I can't.
Here is a case. Mother promoted the child, and mother had the child promoted by paying a bribe.
No, actually, let me take another example. Come back to that. Take a Hindi example. No.
You were right.
Can you say something like, हवा ने दरवाजा बंद किया? दरवाजा बंद हो गया, हवा से बंद हो गया.
yeah, but you are using say, hawa say, so in hawa instead of
Say is not, it's just because of the wind.
exactly because.
Right, cause. It's just a cause. There's no action.
But doesn't the hawa act on the door
Because the
to
door
close it?
wouldn't close in absence.
In real life, yes, this is exactly where we need to distinguish what happens in real life, where you think of, or your intuitions about events in real life, and how they go into the patterning of language. Right? Now, notice you can say, X ने दरवाजा बंद किया, but you can't say हवा ने दरवाजा बंद किया. The moment you have the ne,
Can you not say hawa ne darwaza band?
can you? I find it very hard.
हवा से दरवाजा
हवा से दरवाजा बंद हो गया.
Hindi might be undergoing an evolution now.
Yes.
I'm not particularly comfortable with Hindi, but I'm not particularly comfortable with Hindi. But in English, you can say the wind closed the door.
that's
In English, there is nothing that distinguishes non-action
There's
cause.
just an agent and a cause, right?
No, in English, there is nothing. This is where you have to look at languages to see what kinds of. Notice, there are some things that we haven't done. 3 questions actually that we have not addressed yet, and addressing them would be way beyond the scope of this session. One is, we had these 5 pieces, the 5 Lego blocks. Is that an exhaustive inventory of semantic atoms that build the framework for doing this? Right? We haven't looked at that. There might be more, there are some more, but not a lot more. The second question is, what are the constraints or restrictions on putting these pieces together? How do you put them? The way you put them has to be such that the complex things allow you to express patterns that you do find in languages, while excluding patterns that you never find. Logically possible, but never attested patterns in language. Right? We haven't looked at those constraints, and we're not going to look at them, but there are such constraints. And one more, there was a third question I was going to. Yes, what are the laws that govern the putting together of these and, right, of building these representations? That again we'll look at briefly in a short while. But when you start looking at these constraints, the atomic units and how they are put together, they have to be based on patterns in language. Now in English, Bill closed the door and the wind closed the door. There's no overt difference that you can, there's no difference in form that you can see. Whereas there are languages in which you do see that form come up. So those dictate, those, if you want you want to express the framework such that it captures the patterns in all languages. You know, between verbs, relationships between verbs, relationships between different patterns within a language, and patterns that occur across languages. If you want to do that, you do have to look at patterns that come up in other languages. And the ne in Hindi is a nice thing for that. Okay, so yeah, you do need to separate cause, act on, and sometimes you have them coming together. Now, to Jayashree's question, I'm not sure exactly what your question is.
The way you put the act and cause together, does it mean that the act and cause always go together? If they always go together, why do you need to have two things separately?
Right. Now, if you have act, only act, just act, plain act, X jumped, X ran, all of those are acts. If you take something like X fell, you would have a change of state, non-fallen state to fall. Because in falling, you're not doing anything.
Okay, so there are
it's happening to you, right? If you say something like X hit Y, or X pinched Y, teased Y, scolded Y, you have X act on Y. Nothing may happen. Nothing may be caused by it, but you still have an act on. So that was one of our building blocks. You have the wind caused something to fall and break. Yeah.
Instead of wind, if you say X had Bill murdered and X murdered Bill, it might probably be easier to perceive.
Okay.
Because to have somebody murdered, you don't have to go and strangle the person.
Right.
But to murder somebody, you have to do something.
That just changes the agent, right? The person who did the murdering.
Right.
Agent and causer are different. That's the whole point.
So
the word agent is confusing because it can mean two things.
Right. X had Y killed.
No, what we're saying is like the same thing inside another thing. Like the action, causing is also an action, right?
Causing doesn't necessarily. So, for example, if you say something like you put lime juice in milk and the milk curdles, the lime juice is causing the milk to curdle, but it's not acting.
So could you say that you are causing the milk to curdle indirectly?
I curdled the milk, yes, you can say it. You can say that.
So even though you had something else do it, you could be the causer?
The causer, but that's different from...
But it's not in the sentence.
It's not there in the sentence. Right. So the lime juice curdled the milk versus I curdled the milk with lime juice. Right? I use lime juice to curdle milk.
So you're saying it will be act on if there's a direct contact that's happening, and cause, it doesn't matter, there are many steps.
How it happened?
Actually, the way we distinguish them is, it's just terminology. You say direct causation and indirect causation. So you could have, there is, in fact, there's a pattern in Malayalam which distinguishes the two.
Perhaps another way of looking at it is to say the migraine caused the cure. But if you unpack the actual state of affairs, there's a chain of causation. Sorry, I'm saying the medicine. The drug caused migraine cure.
Yeah.
And
the drug cured the migraine.
Cured the migraine. That's a sort of a chain of causation. X causes Y, Y causes C, C causes B, and so on, and it'll be about, if you look at the chain of causation, there might be about a dozen things. But you can still say cause to mean the whole chain, but you can't do the act upon in that chain. So biologists talk about immediate causation and long distance causation.
So do historians.
So do
Okay,
historians,
so
yes.
direct and indirect cause then is a transdisciplinary concept. These are these, right? Causation being direct versus indirect is a transdisciplinary distinction.
If you switch to what caused the World War, this will become clear.
All right. Okay, so do we want to finish this or shall we leave it? Did you get the... some of you are not getting the difference between Rulaya and Rulvaya.
No, we got it.
You got it.
तो practically 1 minute में समझ में आ जाएगा.
Sorry?
Practically 1 minute में समझ में आ जाएगा.
True. True.
No,
All
I'll
right.
ask more to pinch you.
Any other questions, any other comments at this point before we go to another pattern? All right. And anytime you feel it's too heavy and you want to stop, we can.
Maybe we don't want to stop.
You don't want to stop. All right.
But I just have a, maybe I should reserve it for later also, but I just want to know. What I can understand from this is, even in scientific principles, we have atoms of knowledge on which we build the theories. Is it the same that you are trying to
Yes. Notice I have not used any new concept in building the framework. It just came out of this, right? We paraphrased the sentences and those came out of those, but then we've now given them a status, a particular status, because they play a role in the patterns.
So, but if we were to formalize the procedure for finding the atoms of knowledge, in this case it was English, so we had an understanding and we formulated differently to get the patterns, and then we put in the atoms, semantic, in this case it's semantic atoms. But that process may differ from discipline to discipline.
It
Like,
may
correct?
differ from discipline to discipline, definitely, yes.
But after that, it is the same process.
Yes.
Absolutely, yes. And also, the process may differ from discipline to discipline, but the process may not be that different from language to language. Except that the words that you use, that you start out with, may be different.
Actually, if you're doing the same thing with Icelandic, with Icelandic you don't know what the meanings are. So it'll be harder. You're looking at Icelandic as an outsider, but you're looking at Hindi or English, you're looking at it from an insider, so there's an advantage.
Yeah, so if you want, I don't know about Icelandic, I mean it's a kind of an ancient language or something?
No, it's a spoke. It's
Some language
spoke.
you don't speak.
Okay, so that is equivalent to some ancient language, there's Greek hieroglyphics there, trying to decode, so it's all the same thing.
Actually, you don't even have to go there. Go to any of the
Yeah.
even languages that we don't speak.
Does it make the language learning experience easier? Does it get to know?
The idea is that this is how these go into our learning because this is how we, what you did with speech. You add things, and sometimes it's by analogy, sometimes it's whatever, right? Different processes that you use. But these building blocks sort of shape, guide language learning.
Typically, how many such building blocks would we be able to develop? In this case, we got about 5.
We had 5. Wouldn't be too many more than this. Maybe, in this particular, this, if you think of this as representing event structure in the sense that we use the term event, it would be maybe 3 or 4 more,
Not more, yeah.
not more than that.
Yeah.
But then you would have other kinds of meanings where context comes in and more fine-grained things come in. And here you have the X's and Y's. But what exactly is the content of those X's and Y's in precisely this kind of abstract, abstract representation? So Kaustubh has been talking about actor or causer. Is there a difference between an actor and a causer? And do we have patterns that require us to make that distinction? Do we need something like location? Do we need something like direction? Do we need something like point of view? So for example, something is in front of me versus behind me. There are languages in which, most Indian languages, where there's a difference between, the English has the word give, X gave Y something versus X gave me something. In many languages there is a difference between those two. How are you going to represent that? So there will be other kinds of things, but in this event structure, no more than 3 or 4 more than what we already have. It's actually pretty small.
So I have a question. So when you go to a particular language, the order of the words is dependent on that language, right? So I mean, the structure might be the same, but when you paraphrase it, it comes out as the same structure. But when you're going to a particular language, the order of the subject and the object or so on might be different.
Right.
So is there, I mean,
No.
is there a way to determine?
No, there's no, I mean, this would remain the same.
Is this just evolutionary, or I mean, how different languages have different word orders?
Different, okay. You have to have some external way of signaling difference, signaling the relationships between words in a sentence, right? I'm going to take a very simplistic example. In English, you say X saw Y, and Y saw X. They mean 2 different things, right? In Hindi, you say X ne Y ko dekha, or Y ko X ne dekha. Both mean the same thing. You've changed the order of words. Dekha X ne Y ko. The co-meaning remains the same. Why? Because you have the ne and the ko signaling the relationship. In English, you don't have that, and that relationship is signaled by a word order. Right? I mean, there are a couple of other ways of signaling this.
The case system in German allows you to change around.
Precisely. So if you have a language with a rich case system, then perhaps you won't have rigid word order.
Like Sanskrit.
Sorry?
Sanskrit has the
That's
same.
it. Actually, most Indian languages. Yeah, those are the names given to these various things. All of the 7 or 8 things that you have in Sanskrit.
Yeah, like till now you are saying that if such patterns exist in one language and they do not exist in another language, so can you create patterns or you just go according to convention?
Are you really creating these things, or are you just speaking the language? You learn the language and you speak it. And what we're doing is discovering those patterns. Now, in the process of a language changing, new patterns might come up, right? So, yeah?
She might be asking the question, are the language internal patterns completely arbitrary, or are there universal parts to the pattern? Is that the question?
Is that what you're asking?
Are there patterns that cut across all languages? Is that the question you're asking?
Yeah, like no, patterns may be absent in some and present in some. So can you not introduce patterns seen in one language across like to another language to increase the things that can be expressed?
Okay. It should be possible to express practically everything in all languages, given the words of the language. You might use the words of another language. You might be using, different ways of, there might be, so for example, take the passive, right? X was seen by Y. You may not be able to say that comfortably in Hindi, but you could have other ways of saying it. Now, but do you have that pattern, the passive, in Hindi? Or in other Indian languages? You do. There might be, okay, think of it this way. You have a bag of Lego blocks, right? Of different colors, different shapes. But you can put them together. Think of that as what we might call a universal inventory. Okay? And you have a universal framework for this, how things are put together also. And individual languages may pick not all, but some of those Lego blocks. And this would apply whether it is the sounds of the language, or the sentence structures, word structures, and so on. If you have that kind of an inventory, so you're not going to add something to the inventory, that is fixed. You take out only some of those and use those. So the ones that you have, the language hasn't picked, you're not going to find in that language, right?
That's what I'm asking, why can't you include also the ones that are not picked?
You might. I mean, that's up to the language and the speakers of the language. And in the process of a language changing, you might find those patterns coming in there. But they would be patterns that are already in the inventory, and in order to be in the inventory, you have to have them motivated in a set of language, in some languages anyway. Right? Okay. I was hoping that we'd look very briefly at two more patterns and see how they are related to. Sorry, before we go on, just one, we're not going to have time to look at a whole lot of laws, but there's one law that perhaps we can look at. If you look at the examples on page 2, the ones in, I think, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I'm sure you're all familiar with, from your school grammar, terms like intransitive and transitive, right? I don't like those words, but that's a different thing. But give me an example of an intransitive word.
Yeah, we are far from school.
But plenty of examples there. I even gave you a clue. Examples 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
The door opened.
The door opened? Right, the door opened and somebody opened the door.
Yeah.
What's the relationship there? Well, in terms of that, in terms of
Act.
Act.
The act is one of them.
And then
Will
another
go
is a
open the door.
cause. Yeah.
So
Act and a cause.
if, notice it's two manifestations of the same verb. If the, let's say this is the event structure, what we looked at. If the event structure of the intransitive, what would the event structure of the door opened be? Or the door was open and, no, not the door was open. The door opened and somebody opened the door.
Door open is state of X, right?
State.
Right.
No, it's
You have a change of state, right? Changed from open, from not open to open. So let's just call that event 1. Okay? Then the event structure, what would that of the transitive be?
somebody opened the door. X caused.
Somebody acts on
X acted on the door.
on the door and causes it to change.
Act caused.
Okay.
Acted on the door. Act and cause. Act and cause.
Notice, now we don't say act with, we're taking it to a more abstract level, where we're saying it doesn't matter whether the wind opened the door or a person opened the door, just take the cause. Let's call this event 2. So event 2 contains event 1. That's the relationship between the intransitive and the transitive. If you have a law that says this is the relationship, and this is what you're going to get every time. And if you don't get it at some point, if you find that it doesn't happen, you have that relationship, but this is not the relationship, then you have a counterexample. Okay? And you have to modify your law. Okay. To go to the, we don't have a lot of time. You could state it differently as a
Law is E1, for E2, E1 is just embedded in.
this is the relationship between. Law of cross languages. Yes.
So that is E1 and cause E1 there.
That's right. If the intransitive is E1, then the transitive is E2,
That's the definition.
which contains E1. And that's the relationship between them.
Yesri is asking if the first part, the event structure of intransitive is such and such. Is that a law? And I was saying that's the definition of intransitive.
Or you could put it as given the intransitive form E1, the transitive form must be such and such. Right? That's in the phrasing of the law, which we could modify.
No, to me it's totally different. When you say that event structure of transitive is E1 is something which you're pulling from there. So it's there is a specific definition for E1. Okay, E1 has got a particular meaning.
Right.
So that event structure of intransitive is E1. I thought that was a law. Was that the law, or if intransitive is E1, then transitive contains E1 is the law?
Given the event structure of the transitive as
No, if is fine. I just have to get it into the thing that event structure of intransitive is E1 is the definition of intransitive. So if then is the law, which is fine.
Okay, you have these forms. In 15, 16 and 17. Bilbo wash the dishes. Bilbo wash. Bilbo bathed the baby. Bilbo bathed. Bilbo shaved Frodo. Bilbo shaved. Yes. What's the relationship here between the A's and the B's? They are different, aren't they? So the door closed and bill washed are different. So what is the meaning here in these B sentences? What does it mean? Bill washed.
Himself.
It's an action, but himself. Crucially, Bill washed himself. Bill shaved himself. Bill bathed himself. Right? What we're seeing here is a class of verbs where when you get this kind of thing, you have things. These are what are called reflexive verbs, right? Where you drop this and you get the interpretation of himself. And how about the ones in 18, 19, and 20? Abe married Joe. Abe and Joe married. Ela met Annie. Ela and Annie met. The car collided with the bus. The car and the bus collided.
In the B's it is reflexive.
One person who is doing the action and B is the combined action.
And yet they mean the same thing.
There's no distinction between the first word and the
Sorry?
second. There's no distinction between the doer and the who would be doing
Right. So there really isn't a meaning difference between the A and the B. Right? And yet, if you think in terms of X doing something to Y, you don't have that in B. So,
For example, take this car collided with the bus. Supposing the bus were stationary, this still applies. The car collided with the bus. If you apply the same condition for 20B, it doesn't apply. Car and bus, the stationary bus and car.
okay.
Like
Alright.
A, everything on B.
There's a slight difference in meaning, I agree. Bad example. My choice of example was bad. What about
Even if the bus is moving, car is coming from some other direction.
Coming is the.
yeah, moving?
Car collided with the car.
That's fine. Bus is standing on the car
Bus is
collided.
also moving.
No, the point is that if the bus is not moving, you can say A but you cannot say B.
Yes.
So if you make it moving bus,
Yeah, if you change that to move the moving car and the moving bus, or the car and the bus both moving, or some way to indicate that. But in any case, as you pointed out, there is a slight difference in meaning between the two. So ignore that example. We can replace it with other
You know,
things.
there is a degree.
Right? But yeah.
One could be sitting in the office and have to write.
But is there a difference between the car and bus collided and the car collided with the bus? That's also a process, right? Something happened, right?
It appears as though someone is acted on someone.
Is there that meaning? So, Abe married Joe, and Abe and Joe married.
Each other is coming in.
Each other, exactly. And what you're getting is just like himself in the previous examples, here you're getting each other. So, reciprocal. Right. So there's this class of verbs. Here what we've just seen is some classes of verbs which behave differently. And you don't have a large number of subclasses of verbs, again, they're fairly limited. And you find that this is cross-linguistically, it holds cross-linguistically, the classes of verbs. Yeah.
Tamil has a marker, right?
Yes, Kannada has a marker of the reciprocality.
And reflexive as well.
And the reflexive as well.
Like if you can give an example. What's a
What's a
marker?
marker?
Okay, there's a full form
Like we
of
have
the,
A or something.
I don't know
Some letters
enough Tamil to be able to give you an example. So,
Tamil has this.
self, to do something to self. So, but does that, does that appear on the verb itself anywhere? It does in Kannada. Anyone who speaks?
Jomin.
You speak Kannada.
You change the verb.
the verb with a kul at the end.
Okay, like in Malayalam, where Abhi, Ilam Anine Kandu, Ilayum Aniyum Kandamuttu, kind of.
Okay. No, Kandamutti you're adding, they happen, yeah? But by chance kind, you're adding some meaning, something more there. But there is a, just like the EN that we had in English where it changed something.
Okay, Ila X, Y ne Kalyanam. X and Y ne Kalyanam.
It's the same, but there is no kul or the meaning of self or each other. Yes, Kaustubh?
In French, you add a reflexive word like je m'appelle and j'appelle. You call somebody or you call yourself.
Right.
You have a verb.
So can you give that sentence?
Je m'appelle
Yeah.
Kaustubh would mean I am called Kaustubh, or I call myself Kaustubh, and j'appelle toi means I am calling you.
You.
So.
Yeah, that's not.
That's
That's
not
not
quite
reflexive, it's some other reflexive marker.
The sir is the reflexive word.
It's a reflexive word like himself and herself, apne ko, kind of, but not
Also,
quite.
it separates.
We're talking about something in the verb, in the verb.
Yeah, in German, like if I say I sit, ich sitze. But if I say I seat myself, it's ich setze mich. So the verb changes from sitze to setze.
Right.
And then
That's the kind of
and
word.
also add mich.
Yes.
Isn't
That's
the
the kind.
distinction there in English already? Sit and seat. I mean, those are two different verbs, right? So it's not.
No, but you can't say I sat, but you can't say I seated. I have to
seated
seat
myself.
but you have to say myself.
But he said mish, right? At the
Okay.
end, so.
You have to have the mish.
You have to have them.
So it's not part of the
Oh,
verb.
okay.
It's not.
So
So
change
it's
the
like,
verb and the.
yeah, so that you have in English.
Uh-huh.
But what we're talking about, I'm talking about is the myself being incorporated into the verb itself, right? Now in English, in ex-bathed, it's understood. So there is no specific marker in that verb. But there are languages, Kannada definitely, I don't have an example right now, but let's see if I can find
In
it.
Hindi, you would say nahaya and nahlaya, right? So, isn't that
Yes, but yeah, actually, but then it's, let's see. No, nahaya, nahana, nahlana, but then the verb itself is, it's for somebody else that you're adding something.
So I gave but you cannot say Gujarati. मैं भारत में रहવાનું આપ્યું. मैं ભારત में રહેવાનું આપ્યું.
You want to say something about creating representational systems as preparation for stating the laws?
Yes, so creating this kind of representational system allows us to condense things in such a way, represent them in a way that would then allow us to state observational generalizations and state laws as the next step, right? As part of, but this is a crucial part of theory construction. Now we did something similar, we didn't get anywhere as far as this in family structure, but I gave you a handout, I distributed something afterwards, which did have some of these things. So if you, and there's a mistake there which I think, if you have the handout with you. On page 2 of that handout, so somewhere right on top, it says observations. Those are actually not observations. The observations are there in the story, but they're observational generalizations, which then on page 3 are stated as definitions and laws and so on. Yeah, probably.
An announcement. Mahesh is waiting outside, so those of you who haven't given the bank numbers and stuff, he's going to give a check. I think he said something like 18 people or something like that. So the people who haven't given the bank keys,
He needs the bank details.
the TA.
Just the form or the bank details?
If you haven't given the bank details, then he'll give you a check. Otherwise, he'll send it directly to the bank. But anyway, talk to Mahesh.
IFSC code and your account number.
I know you look at my
All right, thank you.